For more on Maduro's swift capture, the former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien joins us now. Robert, you were National Security Advisor 6 years ago when, on January the 3rd, Qasem Soleimani was taken out. That was a military operation that was met with some controversy from the other side of the aisle. This one has been met with similar controversy. But what did you think of the whole capture of Maduro?
Well, John, Happy New Year. And look, it reminds me of Baghdadi and Soleimani. President Trump just does such a good job politically. At the beginning of the week, he had the Democrats defending Somali fraudsters in Minnesota. And at the end of the week, he's got the Democrats defending a narco-terrorist that they put a bounty on. So, his political skills can't be underestimated. But look, going to the capture, I think the CIA did a tremendous job. I think John Radcliffe and his Special Activities Center and the case officers who were working in Venezuela on the ground, laying the groundwork for this operation, were phenomenal. You're not going to hear a lot about them because they're quiet professionals. And then Delta Force with the 160th Air Regiment, the Night Stalkers going in and getting them into the facility and exfiltrating Maduro. What a flawless operation. It sends a message to the whole world that the United States has a long reach.
You know, it's interesting that the former CIA director, former National Security Advisor John Brennan, agrees wholeheartedly with you. Listen to what he said.
The U.S. military and U.S. intelligence are second to none in terms of their capabilities, their competence, talent, as well as their courageous actions. And so it does look as though it was a flawlessly executed operation, at least according to what we hear from the administration so far.
Well, knock me over with a feather.
Yeah, I don't find myself agreeing with John Brennan very often, John, but he's correct here. And look, we're getting the CIA back in the business of doing operations and protecting Americans around the world, and not doing the faulty analysis and Russia hoax stuff that John Brennan was involved in. But I'm glad he recognized the good work of his former colleagues.
So in terms of where Venezuela goes from here, Delcy Rodriguez, who was the former vice president, is now the acting president. She was speaking pretty tough toward Donald Trump in the immediate hours after this operation. And then Donald Trump said this in a phone conversation. He said, quote, "If she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro." The threat seems to be reflected in one of the latest statements from Rodriguez, who said, quote, "We invite the U.S. government to collaborate with us on an agenda of cooperation oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law to strengthen lasting community coexistence. President Donald Trump, our peoples and our region deserve peace and dialogue, not war." I mean, a lot could go wrong in the power vacuum that exists after Maduro comes out, even though they do have an acting president. How do you think this is going to go with Rodriguez now holding the reins of power and Donald Trump trying to pull her strings?
Well, she seems to be a pretty quick student of President Trump. She got the message, I think, very quickly. And I think she'll play ball and the Chavistas will play ball. Look, she wants a political future in Venezuela. There is some support for the Chavistas. I think they're going to ditch Maduro, who had all the terrible socialist policies of Chavez, but none of the charisma. And she'll have a minority role in the government. I think what the U.S. is trying to do is avoid the mistakes that we committed in Iraq, where we de-Baathified the government and shut down the army, and there was no one. And then we had ISIS fill the void, the famous JV team that Barack Obama talked about. And so I think what we'll do is see a period of transition, like we wanted in Afghanistan, which didn't happen. And look, the opposition in Venezuela is very well organized. They've got Machado. She was the elected vice president. They've got Gonzalez in Spain, who will be coming home soon, the elected president. And they've got Juan Guaido, who we had at the 2019 State of the Union address. And he was the former acting president. He's in exile. I assume he'll come home. So there's a lot of opposition figures. I'm sure Delcy Rodriguez knows that her future is cooperating with Donald Trump and the opposition, and that may buy her some peace and some space in Venezuela.
Well, hopefully it will continue, because we wouldn't want to see that place descend into chaos. I mean,
100%.
Venezuelan people have hurt enough over the decades. Robert, good to talk to you. Hope you had a happy New Year. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, John.
All right. Now this.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.